Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Bekier. I'm a PTSD in psychotherapy. I am from Poznań, Poland. I work with adults in group therapy and individual therapy, and I also work with couples. I'm also a supervisor as a PTSDA and a university teacher in Poznań. And if you could just write on the chat where you are now so that we can connect. So we'll see where we are. So I am Poznań, Poland. Right, UK, Romania, Liverpool. Wow, great. So it's international. Okay. The Netherlands. Okay. Wow. And what's the weather like at your place? Because it's spring here in Poland. It just started, so it's the first weekend of spring. And how about you? Sunny there as well. But you can also speak. You don't have to write it down on the chat, all right? We can exchange. Wow, 13 degree. Wow. You see, it's starting positive. All right. As for the plan, we have 2 hours and the webinar is being recorded. But when you work in the breakout rooms, it will not be recorded. And if there is something in the main room that might be confidential or, sensitive, the recording will be cut out. This piece will be cut out for the sake of security, right? Take care of yourselves. If there are exercises, work to the extent you just feel you're comfortable with. And I really mean it. It's a normal contract. It's a safety contract when we work in TA. But today we are going to talk also about some existential matters. We are going to talk about death. We might talk about death. So please be very careful and protective of yourself. All right? Just use your adult as you seem fit. I would also like to ask you for a quality presence, if it's okay for you to switch the cameras on, if it's possible, because it might not be possible for some people, but it will be better and we could connect more if we see each other, right? Okay, thank you, Claire. Do you have any questions regarding the contract for the webinar? All right. So I'll invite you to your first exercise. If you could just take a few deep breaths, put your feet on the ground, try to lean back on your chair and relax a bit. And think why you chose this particular workshop. What in particular drew you to this topic? What did you have in mind? Why, to use the Bernian question, why you are here and not somewhere else? Okay. So I'll put you in breakout rooms. All right, Casper, but I'll put you now with breakout rooms so that you could share with other people what are your impressions, what are your expectations, what are your questions, whatever comes to your mind, all right? What was it like for you? Does anyone want to share or to ask questions? Go on, John.
So I was in a breakout room with two other colleagues, and we all seemed to identify the title itself seemed to touch on the existential, which
Hmm.
drew us all from a slightly different, I think, lens on that. And the I guess the existential tapping into the current fractured nature of the world, which I really identified as geopolitical instability, and somebody else was talking about, did this start at COVID? Did people's existential curiosities get more stimulated at that time because of the massive changes? And another
Hmm.
colleague was at a different stage in life, and it seemed to go from the lens of looking at the fear aspects of existentialism and finding one's place. So we
Hmm.
all kind of saw the same thing, but in slightly different ways.
Hmm.
And the other thing I'll put in chat, because I've had experience of you before as a really good presenter. So that was the other thing that drove me to it. And I noticed you excluded yourself at the beginning of your question. You just went for the content and you didn't include anything personal, which I'm kind of saying, I'm glad that you're doing this presentation. I'm glad it's you.
Thank you, John. That's very nice of you. All right. And in other breakout rooms, what was it like? Yeah, go on, Rob. You're muted. You need to unmute.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, I read your paper, Paul Adam, sorry, about the secret garden. I like that. So that was part of the reason that drew me to this. But anything to do with love is a draw, I think, for me personally.
Hmm.
And and some of the reasoning behind coming here was quite simple, really, and not too deep. For some of the others. We got talking a bit about the difference love makes to people with medical conditions or their caregivers,
Hmm.
uh, and to pets as well, not just humans with medical conditions, but pets as well. And we got talking a bit about football as well, and
Okay.
how okayness, how football connects us and disconnects us. There's a lack of okayness in football, for sure, and that's obvious. And the racism that's about, yeah. So, yeah, we got talking about that.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. All right. So yeah, I'll get back to your comments later. Okay. Anyone else?
We
Uh,
talked. Oh,
oh, sorry,
sorry.
you go first.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's fine.
We talked about the definition of love, and we talked about okayness and love, and a bit kind of echoing what Nicole was saying in the keynote speech,
Hmm.
and definitions of that, what that looks like, um, and I think the title for me, it kind of the it spoke to kind of that fragility of love in a really desperate situation, but something that endures.
Hmm.
What does that look like? Is that something that where you accept the other person, where you tolerate the other person, where you don't hate
Hmm.
the other person, or is it something a little bit more active than that and a little bit more
Hmm.
proactive? Yeah, just follow on what Nicole said in the keynote speech.
Okay. That's really interesting because I will just start talking about the topic that I chose because but let me just stop here. Does anyone want to comment or does anyone have a question? Casper started talking, I think. Yeah, Christina, go on.
Yeah, for me, I think the personal struggle that I connected to the topic of this workshop is about how to stay in a loving and okay position towards myself and other people when I don't feel physically safe. So when I'm in the presence of someone who represents an immediate threat to my safety, so not a conceptual
Hmm.
threat, but someone that I don't feel safe with here and now. Is it possible to keep that loving and okay attitude?
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Anyone else? There's something in the chat. All right, Paul. Okay. So it's really interesting, and it makes me think about different perspectives about this particular topic that I chose, because when I first saw the theme of the conference, I immediately thought about a book because my topic is from a book by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, right? Love in the Time of Cholera. Let me just, all right. So, and I use this metaphorical analogy, but I focused probably on the second part of the title, because just a short notice, this is a book about love that lasts over half a century and comes to fruition only in the end of the heroes' lives. And the word cholera is used, refers not only to physical epidemics of cholera, but also is used metaphorically to love as disease, madness, or fate, right? And I thought about it in a slightly different way. I like that. I like the book. I like the title, but I chose that topic because of what is happening right now. And from my perspective, we are living in the time of cholera. It is around us. It's the war. I'm from Poland, so we have the war in Ukraine, right? There's war in Gaza, probably war in Iran. I think it started in the morning, right? We have unpredictable Trump as president and ICE, right? We have Epstein scandal and documents, just to name a few, and it's happening right now, right? So the question is, and my question was for this for this webinar, how can we remain okay towards ourselves and others in such circumstances, right? This is my thinking, right? But I'm really inspired by the notion of love, so I have to think of it. So we'll get back to that a bit later, because I hope we're going to look for answers for both questions about how can we remain okay, and what about love? How can we express love? And we'll do it together. So let's dig in to it. I'll invite you to another exercise, which is a real exercise. As you know me, some of you, I really like drawing, and I really like using it in my trainings. So this is an exercise that you will do first individually and then in breakout rooms. I will give you the full instructions now, put you in breakout rooms, but the first part will be individual. A few minutes, just take a few minutes, right? And then you'll discuss the results of the exercise. So take a piece of paper, a pencil or a pen, or if you're more kinesthetic, you can use objects in your room, or you can just visualize. It is up to you. So, but if you're drawing, if you take a piece of paper, let me see, draw a vertical line across the middle of the page like this, right? More or less. This line represents a cliff. So imagine a cliff with trees, grass, animals, people, objects, buildings, whatever. You are standing on the edge of the cliff, right? Beyond the edge, there is an abyss and a boundless sea. You can look back at the world, at existing beings, trees, animals, etc., whatever you draw there. But you can also look the other way, into the abyss, into the sea, which represents nothingness. So when you're drawing, try to visualize the cliff. What is there? Who is there? Use your intuition. Draw plants, symbols, objects, people, whatever comes to your mind. Just make it quite quick so as to rely on your intuition more than just critical thinking, all right? And after that, discuss it within the group, what is the meaning you give to what you drew on the cliff? How significant is it for you? And more importantly, are you looking back to what you drew or forward into the abyss? And for people listening, of course, let me remind you about the safety contract. Share what you feel comfortable sharing here. For people listening, it would be important to ask the question why. Use this why question. Why is it important? All right. So, what was it like for you? Anyone would like to give some feedback? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Yeah, go on, John.
Well, it really took us to some different places, and the meaning of the abyss came quite quickly. Some confusion about whether we were meant to create an abyss, whether this was related to the concrete situation of the world, whether this was like a more internal, personal, introspective, like the Jungian shadow side of self. So again, people came at this from different angles. I identified my own preference for living in the concrete and really wanting to hang on to the happy side of the cliff. And I easily identified my abyss as I put in there nutty world leaders, because this is the thing to me that's bringing the abyss. Unless we're going into the deep internal reflective parts of darker side of humanity. Yeah, that's what I've got to say currently.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Just a few words so that we can connect to that. Go on, Christina.
Yeah, part of what I drew on the cliff was community of people spending time together, enjoying stuff. And at first, as I was drawing, I imagined myself as being one of those people. And then by the end of drawing, I realized, oh, but I should be on the edge of the cliff. And I imagined myself being there, and I realized that my sense of safety being there depended on whether the other people were aware of the abyss being there and that we are heading towards it. And then in the discussions afterwards in the group, I realized how that's a part of my script, because that's part of my experience as a child of being alone with my reality and my extended family. So I found it interesting how it turned out, even if in this very, I don't know, very open exercise of imagination.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I thought of it sort of on the cliff side. I thought of it as safe, frustration, and I put alone. I thought more of myself. And on the abyss side, I put fear, uncertainty, exciting, alone, and awareness. And I think the exciting part was that search, that looking for some kind of, the dark things that we're afraid to go to. So that was my sort of thoughts on what the abyss was, the shadow, isn't it, I think? But sometimes we don't want to go there, but we can learn so much about ourselves sometimes by going there, I think. Yeah. And I found it quite interesting. We talked about gardens, and I've got an allotment, and sometimes it can be ordered and structured, and sometimes it can be it can have weeds. And I've got a section on it where I put wild flowers, and there's comfrey and daffodils and things, and it looks like a weed to some people, but it looks like a flower as well. So there's sort of, I guess there's some order in the chaos. So what I'm trying to say is, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I really like the fact that you use this Jungian metaphor, this analytic approach to the shadow, right? I haven't thought of that because while you were doing this exercise, I was thinking, well, we could just stop here. Of course, we're going to continue and I'm going to give you some theory. But as a matter of fact, this is the main thesis of existentialism, that man is surrounded by nothingness. We come from nothingness and we will turn into nothingness. So I use more of Heidegger's thinking. So let me just start with the presentation, if I find it. No, let's just a sec. Yeah, it's here. All right, let me just put it. You see the screen? Yeah, all right. So just a short reminder, because this is not a lecture on philosophy. Martin Heidegger used, well, many good notions. I like two of them. The thrownness, which means that we are thrown into the world, and being towards death, which means this is what you did. We come from nothingness, we go into nothingness. So our existence is all about being towards death. And what comes after that is what Heidegger called the Angst, which is the dread of death. And the only way to not to be overwhelmed by this fear is to give meaning to what we do in life and to things, people around us. So this is the part of the cliff with existing creatures, trees, grass, and people, right? And it's our responsibility. It was more Sartre that talked about the responsibility, but it is our responsibility to give meaning and thus to get out of this dread of death, which is inevitable, right? And there's a great book by Rachel Cook on existential perspective in TA. And there is a good article by John Nuttall, I think, also about the existential approach in TA. I think you'll have the presentation afterwards, after the webinar, of course. If you need it, just email me, I'll send it right away. So if we think about this in terms of existential perspective, we may come to memento mori, which is remember about death. And according to Heidegger, the acceptance of the finiteness of life is a necessary condition for authenticity, for a fruitful life, we may call it, or for autonomy in TA terms, I would say. And what happens now in I'm talking about Western culture, more or less. Our culture is very narcissistic, and we have a tendency to forget about death, about suffering. We are told not to do that, right? And at the same time, as therapists or counselors, we are in the suffering business, right? So we are in constant contact with that. So, and now is the second part of the topic for this webinar, OK-ness. So what is OK-ness? How would you define it? Let me just stop the What do you think OK-ness is? And how would you link it to love? Because you mentioned love in your questions. What are you thinking? Anyone? Because we all use this term OK-ness, right? But what does it mean?
It's not. I was just thinking about it. It's not perfectionism, is it? It's not. As it, interestingly saying about Western culture, how we, we're trying to increase life, longevity, and maintain beauty standards, and all these different things. Of are we going to try and live forever type thing? And accepting something we talked about in our first group breakout room was love has to involve rupture, and it has to involve negotiation and some messiness, as well as everything else that we associate with love, which I think as a Western culture we set up as being very idealized. And you can look at like the Disney ideas around that, and Hollywood, as mentioned in our group. So I think okayness has to be able to hold all those different aspects, the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of life. It's not an idealized state, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking anyway.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's a very broad thing. Okayness. It's open to interpretation, like Nicole said in the keynote, and it's not necessarily love. It can be just yeah, okay, kind of 50-50 kind of thing. So maybe that's what some of our us as practitioners, our clients need. Maybe some of them aren't ready for love, but and definitely some of them aren't ready for love. But yeah, it's very broad and it's open to interpretation, isn't it? It's definitely not necessarily love.
Mm-hmm. All right. Claire, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the word that came to me was balance.
Mm-hmm.
But and that would probably go in with all these other words that have been used as well. It made me think about a particular client and think about balance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it might be balance. Yeah.
Yeah, but with one client, it might be balance. With myself, sometimes it might be keeping myself balanced, and then it might be something else with another client. So like somebody said, it's very broad. That's what it feels like, and open to interpretation, as you said, and like contains so much. Yeah, okayness.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Okay.
I think for me, it meant sort of acceptance of the self, sort
Mm-hmm.
of the good and the bad. People have mentioned that, and sort of being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what clients, they just want to be good enough, don't they? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it's about acceptance. But as Claire said, it's about acceptance, the good things and the bad things,
Yeah.
right? So thus we reach the balance, probably.
Mm.
Okay.
I think
John? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so as I'm hearing people speak, it's helping me to formulate a clearer idea of this balance. So I'm going to perhaps be a little provocative. Maybe it's accepting our inhumanity, or where we experience turbulence at our own inhumanity, being prepared to make some adjustments to reach a level where that's tolerable. So I'm thinking about going to therapy conferences and people having really expensive cars while the people in the world are starving, or people talking about humanity and compassion and then sitting and eating their cheap ham sandwich, which is completely unnecessary, without thinking if they're choosing to eat meat, even where it's come from, but preaching compassion. So these kind of very idiosyncratic patterns that emerge for all people and repeat in the world of therapy just the same. So where people are saying one thing, but actually maybe not understanding their impact. So maybe okayness is really understanding who we are with all our inhumanities and being prepared to make adjustments where they're intolerable for self, and finding a place where we are okay or in balance with that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I quite like the phrase love without ownership. Because I think the more therapy I've done and the more I've come to kind of love myself, like myself. I want less and less from other people. So I had to be okay first before I could then accept other people for whatever they were, because in the past I've always wanted something from someone, whether it's recognition, validation, connection, dedication, you know, all of these things. I love that, you know, that Buddhist thing about, you know, walking up the road and seeing the flower, and you know, you want to pick the flower and own it and it dies. But if you go along and you love the flower, then you give it water, you appreciate it, but you don't own it. But you arguably you're showing greater love to that because you're not in it, because you're okay, you don't need anything. So I think that that kind of speaks to me. It's a bit like allowing somebody, and I think I'm thinking of myself as a therapist, just allowing somebody to become more fully themselves rather than me imposing something on them, whether unconsciously or consciously.
So you're saying that it starts with us, we start with ourselves, and then when we don't need from others, we can give some sort of selfless love.
Oh,
So
we yeah.
in the case of the flower, we can let the flower grow and not to pick it up, right?
We can let it grow. We can let it be itself. We can support it to be itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we mentioned in our group about physis, and it's like there's no attachment. You to use a Buddhist term, that's taken out of it. It's like a mutual appreciation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Christina.
I remember the term that Carl Rogers used, unconditional positive regard. And I think for me that's very much related to OK-ness. And then what John said, reminded me of how in TA we make the difference between a person being okay and the behavior being okay. So I guess that's part of the OK-ness, acknowledging that some behaviors are not acceptable for us. I guess that's part of being truly okay with ourselves and knowing what our boundaries are.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, and I think we will work on that. Let's get back to the presentation. Wait, what? All right. So, as a matter of fact, well, I was also thinking, because I was trying to link the notion of love to OK-ness, and I thought about agape. Do you know this term, agape? Which is a sort of selfless love and acceptance, right? In Greek terms. So, to continue, well, we kind of replied to that question, what we can do as human beings as well as therapists. So when we think about OK-ness, of course, the model of I'm okay, you're okay, the life positions comes into play. So if we think about it, it's a sort of polarity, right? I'm okay or I'm not okay. In clinical terms, we could use splitting here, but I thought about something else, because also Beren wrote about I, you, they. Keith Tudor wrote about I, you, we, they. But I thought about I, you, and the world as it is right now. And my thinking is that the optimal position in this particular setting would be I'm okay, or the goal or the objective, I'm okay, you're okay, and the world is not okay, but this is okay. Because the world, if we think about it, has always been like this. We probably in the last 50 years in Western Europe, we forgot how awful it might be. And now we're facing reality. But there's nothing new under the sun here, right? So if we turn into literature, because I like literature and I like quotations from different things, we can take one of two, let's say, perspectives. The first one is from Shakespeare, that life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury and signifying nothing. Or we can think in terms of Beckett's endgame, use your head, you're on earth. There's no cure for that. So you see, and the second one, there is, because the first one is about despair, right? The life is signifies nothing. The second one is, as a matter of fact, it's very similar because it acknowledges the despair, but do not surrender to the despair. And it made me think, while I was preparing the webinar, about adult thinking, that we are here now with what is happening right now in the world. And the only thing we can do is to use our adult thinking in terms of integrating adult, like Tudor said, right? So taking into account the circumstances around us. And what the notion that really helps in this perspective is the psychological resilience. So you all know it. I'll start from the basics and we'll get into TA. So it's an ability to cope mentally with a crisis or to return to a pre-status quickly. And as a matter of fact, it's a technical term of a material that can bounce back to the previous state. Imagine a sponge, right? If you put pressure on a sponge, well, depending on what kind of sponge, but it will come back to the previous state because it is resilient, right? So Rick Hanson, which wrote a book on resilience, said that it's a set of skills achieved through positive neuroplasticity, which means that we can practice that, we can exercise that, right? And the task of the resilience is the first one is deal with difficulties, protect your weak points, and increase your resources. Because the more resources you have, the more probable would be that you will bounce back to the previous state, that you will not, be overwhelmed by whatever happens. All right. And I would like to invite you to a very short exercise right now, and you will be working in pairs. Your task right now is to think about your strengths and your resources as a therapist, as a counselor, or as a human being. What am I good at? You will have 5 minutes, and your task is to give as many positive strokes to yourself as possible. Right? So try to reply to this question. What are my strengths as a therapist or a counselor? Right? And the other person can share intuitively or through his or her observations some other positive strokes. Some people are smiling. That's a good sign. I will not ask you for feedback this time, but just want to say that this is a starting point. You need to be nourished in order to work with other people, right? So this is our task as therapists, to work on that, to be nourished, to be recognized, to do everything we can do so as to start working with other people, to be in a resourceful state, so to say. All right, so let's just get back to... All right, so let's get into TA. I would like to recommend you a great article by Vanita English about resilience in TA. And she wrote about three aspects, three motivators. And for her, resilience would be the ability to return to emotional balance after a traumatic event through the rotation of the three motivators. And they are, I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'll try. Servia, which is the fear for survival. Transia, the need for peace and transcendence. And passion, the life force, the vitality that allows us to love and create despite danger and harsh conditions of life, let's say, right? So, wait, where am I? So if we think about the three, Servia is about safety and individual well-being. So these are the physical needs and the emotional needs. The needs for strokes, for affection from the therapist, of course, because we're talking about therapeutic setting. And transia would be about calmness, tranquility, harmony, some sort of meditation, art, music. Whereas passia is about creativity, humor, curiosity, enthusiasm, and hope. And Vanita English gives a great example here about Viktor Frankl, which you probably know. This is the author of A Man in Search of Meaning. And he survived the concentration camp because what he had in mind was a book he wanted to write. He went to the concentration camp with a manuscript of his book. Of course, it was taken from him. So he had this drive to write it and to publish it, and it helped him survive the camp, right? So English says that the motivators are underneath even ego states, and they are in interaction with all ego states, right? And I've thought about it in terms of, I wouldn't say energy invested, but of different aspects of each of the motivator. So if we think about it, each one has a positive and negative aspect. The positive aspect of Servia is protection, right? Whereas a negative is paralysis. It's a fear that freezes, that does not allow us to move forward. We are frozen in time. It's the case of prolonged bereavement, for example. I have a client who broke up with his partner 5 years ago, and he still can't do anything in his life, right? Because he's still in there. We're working on that, of course, but it was so devastating for him to move forward. So we can say that he's in Serbia too much, right? As for Transia, it's about acceptance, a sort of peace, right? So this is the memento mori we talked about earlier. But when there is too much Transia, or in a negative aspect, and can turn into apathy, escape into isolation, right? So this is the Macbeth's quote. Or in what Heidegger calls fallenness. Fallenness means falling into the world and dealing with trivial things. Sometimes we do that. We have a tendency to occupy our minds with things we have to do, and we do not stop. And we stop thinking about what really matters in our life. Of course, our clients do that too, right? And as for passion, we can talk about vitality and physis as well, right? To create, to flourish, to grow. But if there's too much passion, it might mean a manic escape, doing too much, right? Not being with contact with reality or with real danger, right? So another aspect, because I really like the notion, the concept of relational needs. I was thinking, Erskine's relational needs, I was thinking about which relational need in therapy we can attribute to each of the motivators. So for Servia, I would think about security, acceptance, validation, and making an impact. Because Servia focuses on protection and seeking strokes, right? For Transha, it would be self-definition and acceptance, paradoxically here. But if we think about the need for acceptance, it's the need of being accepted by an object, right? And in therapy, we can think about individual acceptance by the therapist, but also here in Transha, acceptance by a higher power, by something transcendent, right? And for Pasha, it would be having the other initiate, mutuality, and express caring, just to name them, right? So, okay. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? What's going on through your mind? You hear that? Rob, you're smiling. I can see that.
Is this your concept, Adam? Did you come up with this concept and apply the relational needs to it as well? You thought about the relational needs yourself, and
Yeah.
it's a great concept. I'm impressed by it. That's why I'm smiling for starters, and it has great application for sure in the consulting room. Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, first and foremost, I wanted to stroke you because it's a great idea. You've
All right.
developed Finita's thinking there, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right. Any other comments about this part of theory? Have you known this, the three motivators by Vanita English?
No.
So, yeah, we still have time. Let's work together. I'll put you into 2 breakout rooms with bigger groups. And I would ask you to take example of one client. You can make it up or you can use a client, a real one, in a sort of crisis or a difficult situation, or when you're stuck in the process. Try to think and analyze the situation with regard to the 3 motivators. All right. So which motivator is really in action here? Is it Servia? Is it Trasha? Is it Pasha? So where is the client stuck, right? And your task would be to think what questions, what actions, what interventions you can use. Try to use the group knowledge, the group wisdom, right? What you can use as a therapist to stimulate the other. All right. Wait, what? The other 2, probably, right? Some of you are smiling, so I guess it was really good work in the breakout rooms. Okay. Any comments, any feedback? What did you come up with?
I'm struggling a little bit with the overlap in terms of client need. Because we need all of these things, don't we, to be resilient.
That's true.
And I don't at the moment. I haven't read the article, so I'm on the back foot. But I'm struggling to find the concepts useful at this point because of how they've been separated out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, we need balance in all three, right?
So it's like they need all of them. It's where you weighted towards a particular moment in the therapy. Yeah.
Let me give you an example with the client I talked about with the prolonged bereavement. So he's in Serbia, right? So I use a lot of pasha. So I try to laugh with him as much as possible or to do creative stuff. And to sometimes it means, of course, it's my personal style, but it means transgressing the frame or doing something out of the box. So, for example, once he wanted to write a letter to his ex-partner, like for the end of the relationship, and he asked me if we could burn it together. So we did in my office, and it smelled like hell after that, but I think it was worth it. Right? So it was, going out of the box to enhance his creativity, to solve the problems. So to get into Pasha more than into Serbia. Does it make sense to you, Judith?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're getting close to the end, so let me just show you two things that I think are important. Yeah. So as in TA, I thought if there are three motivators, it might be a triangle. So it needs to be equilateral, right? So that there is a balance. But what's really important, and I think we have to have it in mind that there's intersubjectivity of resilience in the therapeutic settings, because we, as therapists or counselors, we have our own triangle and the client has his or her own, right? So this is a transferential domain, how to work with that, right? But I don't have the answer right now. For me, it's about what we did in the beginning, which is nourishing our own system so as to be in balance before we enter the office, right? As much as it's possible. And I would like to give you another quote. It's a poem by Czesław Miłosz, who is a Polish poet, and he's got a Nobel Prize for his poetry. It's just about the fact that there will be no other end of the world as it is right now, as it is happening right now. It's about that. And as you can see, there's memento vivere, which complements memento mori. So in thinking and having in mind the notion of death, let's not forget about life, about living, right? So here's my phone number and my email address. If you need it, just email me. I'll answer the questions that I can answer, of course, if I know how to. We still have 4 minutes. So now it's the time for your comments, for your feedback, for your final information back to me.
Would it be possible to get the article that was referenced before? Because I can't find it.
Fanita English? You're talking about that one? It's in TAJ.
Oh, okay. Okay. No worries.
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to share it, but if you, at least I can give you a link.
I've
If you
just
have
Googled
access.
it and found it. That's any help.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
available, yeah.
all right. Okay, thank you, Claire. All right. So, what was it like for you? What are you taking with you from this webinar?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I really like how you developed finitude's thinking and defined the positive and the negative aspects of servia, transia, and pasha, and also how you've given us a bit of a treatment direction for them. So the relational needs that you can consider in using them. That was really cool. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Yes. So, John, yes. Despite the word cholera, some optimism. Thank you, John. I had another quote in mind. It's from Desiderata, and it's like the final part. With all its sham and drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Don't worry, strive to be happy.
Mhm.
I really like that one.
There's so much potential in it, isn't there?
Yeah.
And and existing currently as well. Beauty.
Yes.
Can I just say, Adam, like I would echo what I think it's John said about it being really thought-provoking today, and it's been really broad as well. So I think for me, there's been sort of such a broad range here of thought-provoking things that and breaking up into small groups has just been great. So that and I've spent time with the same people a couple of times in a group, and that's been really useful as well, to be able to know each other just a little bit better and develop our thinking as well, and the chats that we had. So it's just been great. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah. It's really been good. Thank you.
Thank you, Casper.
I've been really inspired, been very inspired by it. And I'm going to go away and read that article. I come at these topics from quite a Eastern lens. So I got a bit frustrated at the beginning when it was all about the Western capitalist patriarchal. But it's nice to have that contrast, and think about that and think about both sides of that. And I think just to comment on your desiderata quote, and somebody saying it's still I would go further than that. I would say that you need that contrast. You need that deep, those challenges to then appreciate life itself. And that's, if you're talking from a spiritual perspective, people want to incarnate on earth because you get the full gamut of everything, all the depth of emotion, as hard as it is sometimes. So no, I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. It's been very thought-provoking. I particularly like what you said about the world's not okay, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about acceptance and sort of, and it made me think about self and others, and sort of how we all have some different interpretation of what the abyss was. Interestingly enough, and so thank you for that, and take care.
Thank you, Paul. All right, guys, thank you very much. I encourage you to do something now for your Pasha domain or for Transha domain. So I'm going for a walk in the forest. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Well done.